The webinar actually focuses on the AWS well-architected, which is actionable guidance for architecting systems in the cloud. And JT Geary and John Ray of NOps is going to be speaking with Matt Yanshin, I think it is, of AWS, about pretty much about all things AWS well-architected. So if you have never heard of AWS well-architected, or you are interested in learning more about AWS well-architected, this session is definitely for you. The second one that I want to let you guys know about is called Improving the Reliability of Financial Services with Chaos Engineering. This one is sponsored by Gremlin. It's happening Tuesday, September 1st at 1 p.m. Eastern, again on DevOps.com. And in this webinar, the folks at Gremlin are going to be talking about chaos engineering. They are all about chaos engineering. And in this webinar, as I said, they're going to be discussing how chaos engineering can actually be used in financial services in the FinServ space to increase the development velocity while not introducing any more failures or mitigating the risk of failures, among other things. This is a great use case for chaos engineering, in my opinion, and I surely hope that you'll be able to join us for this webinar, because I think that there'll be some true takeaways for many, many verticals beyond financial services. The final webinar I want to let you guys know about is happening also September 1st. This one is happening on securityboulevard.com, and it's happening at 11 a.m. Eastern. This one I'm really super excited about. It is called Garmin versus Wasted Locker, Cyber Resilience Lessons from the Biggest Cyber Attacks of 2020. Now, this one is sponsored by Immersive Labs. And the folks at Immersive Labs are actually going to be walking attendees through a simulated ransomware attack. And the one that they're going to be modeling actually is the one that occurred to Garmin very recently. So what they're going to do is they're going to talk about the cyber attack as it unfolds, discuss some of the business and human aspects of ransomware, and really talk about how Wasted Locker, how it works and what organizations can do if they ever find themselves in a ransomware attack. It's a true kind of step-by-step learning scenario that I believe will have a lot of takeaways for attendees. And as I said, I'm really excited about this one. I hope you'll be able to join me for it. As I said before, we have so many great webinars coming up on DevOps.com and Security Boulevard. So please, well beyond the ones I just told you about, please check out the websites, DevOps.com/webinars or SecurityBoulevard.com/webinars, and see some of the webinars that we have coming up beyond these three. Also, there's a listing there of all the webinars we have on demand. We have some really great ones there. So please do check that out. And in the meantime, I will be back Monday for the next edition of the webinars preview. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Stay safe.
Charlene, great stuff today. Next, we're lucky to have a channel roundup right now from the one and only Mike Vizard. And Mike is meeting with the CEO of Perimeter 81, a security company that just announced an additional $40 million round of funding. Let's go over now to Mike and find out more.
This is Digital Anarchist.
All right, thanks, guys. We're here today with Amit Barakat, who's the CEO of Perimeter 81. Amit, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mike. How are you doing? Thank you so much. Happy to be here today.
All right, doing great. And congratulations, you guys landed another $40 million in financing. That's quite a lot. What are you guys going to do with the funding now? You bought everybody a congratulatory espresso.
So, look, I think that the SASE space, we call it Secure Network as a Service, Gartner came up with the term SASE last year in August, is a space race. Space race for replacing a very large market of the firewall space. hardware and moving away to a cloud-based, cloud-first, mobile-first solution. And it requires significant amount of investment into a product mainly. And we in 2031 are doing all what it needs to remain and also improve our product offering, working closely with our customers, and provide an excellent product and solution in order to win it.
When I think of you guys, the phrase software-defined perimeter comes to mind. So is that kind of what you're focused on, and SASE is kind of an extension of that, or a renaming of the category, or how do you perceive all these things coming together?
Yeah, actually, it's a very good question. So we look at it a bit differently. First of all, software-defined perimeter is a framework where you have a controller, which is like you can think about like airport tower, which always knows who is taking off, what airplane is landing, what airplane is crossing by, right? So basically the SDP controller is responsible to orchestrate and monitor your entire network. The second piece is the SDP gateway, which is something that enforces the policy that the control tower basically configures. And SDP client, which is usually an agent. So this is the framework. Now, we in 2031, what we basically invested initially is building not only the framework, but the platform. So that's why today we run and manage about 30 different POPs, point of presence in the cloud edge, hardware that we buy, own, configures, installing our own software about on top, in order to provide a unified network in the cloud. Like a cloud networking solution that is multi-tenant, multi-regional. The network is basically the bloodstream of the organization, right? And this we call the platform. Our network is basically like the SDP gateway, like the part of the framework, right? This is how it plays together. So I will call it like that the perimeter one is the bloodstream. On top of that bloodstream, we develop different use cases and different security services to unify as a service, right? And it follows the SDP framework, which includes the controller, which is like the airport tower, and the SDP gateway, which is our network, and the SDP client, which are the agents that employees installing.
Oh, so there's an agent piece that talks to the service and kind of registers that client, as it were, with the rest of the service. Do you think that we're going to shift towards consuming networking more as a service rather than a bunch of boxes that I deploy and secure, or how do you think this is going to evolve?
Definitely. So look, today the firewalls are protecting the office, but the people are outside the office working from home. COVID only accelerated it, but it will happen anyway. And resources are moving to the cloud. So you come to an office, you have a box that's protecting the office, but there are no resources and no people inside, right? Doesn't make sense. So that's why we strongly believe that it will move to the edge cloud, basically data centers that are close to the user. And the agent piece is in order to provide a unified experience, regardless whether you are inside the office or outside the office. All your traffic goes through the single cloud service that provides you all your networking security, as well as endpoint security in the future, and other cybersecurity services that are basically delivered and managed from a single management platform, a single secure network as a service, and a single agent.
Yeah. So when COVID hit, everybody kind of rushed to get everybody out of the office, and they used the technologies they knew or had at hand. And so we have a bunch of VPNs that are out there that are having some issues scaling, and end users don't exactly love these pieces of software in terms of the experience. So do you think that now that we've gotten some clarity on how long we might be out of the office, or even permanently out of the office for that matter in a lot of cases, will organizations rethink their networking strategy and their security strategy? Will they have to, and is that process starting now?
Okay, you are spot on. So what we saw in March when basically COVID accelerated, then organizations basically doubled down on their existing VPN infrastructure, existing firewalls to buy more licenses, buy more boxes in order to support the scale. In a very simple way, right? Like it was emergency. We need to support 100% of our employees. Let's buy 10 more boxes in order to support it. Now, organizations understand that work from home, work from anywhere, and cloud is here to stay, right? And only get more adoption and employees will continue to work remotely and from anywhere. And now we see larger and larger organizations are basically approaching Perimeter 31 and saying, we have a big project now to reevaluate all our network security and remote access methodologies and the solutions that we use, and let's start, right? I'm ready to consider replacing, tearing up all the boxes, all the firewalls that I invested millions of dollars into, and move into a cloud-based, mobile-first, modern solution as a service.
We hear a lot about the phrase zero trust architectures these days. In your mind, what does that mean exactly? And what does it take to get there?
So zero trust basically means that you cannot trust anything. And there are different ways we basically address to it. I think the most common term is ZTNA, Zero Trust Network Access, which basically is a replacement to VPN. And the idea is to move away from site-centric security to user-centric security and to create some kind of segmentation between the user and the network. For example, in Perimeter 31, we have the application access that we emulate the application in our cloud and only transmitting an image to the browser of the user. So there is no network access and nothing can go through, right? So basically means I cannot trust anything, don't trust your endpoint. I will stream you an image of the application, we'll emulate it in the cloud, so nothing can go through. So I think that's something that basically we, at least in Perimeter 31, call it for. But I think there are different implementations and different meanings for zero trust. I think it's yet to be a standard. It's not like an RFC where you have a specific specification. Although I saw, like a week ago, I think NIST has basically published a paper. What is TNA? What is zero trust network access? What does it mean? What it means in regards to enforcing user policies and the network access and so forth. So I think it will something that we'll better understand in a few years now as we work closely with the customers, working closely with the market, working closely with the analysts, and as we move forward and adjust, creating basically a very focused terminology and understanding.
All right. What is your best advice then to networking and security people right now as they kind of look at all this? How do I make this transition? Because there's a lot of moving parts, I think. So what's the best way to get started?
So I think that one of the advantages that secure network as a service solution is SaaS, right? Solution. So it's relatively easy to implement and relatively easy to consume. Let's take, for example, Gmail, right? Moving away from Exchange that you have on your Exchange server that you host to Office 365 or Gmail. The move is relatively simple, but you don't have to do it all at once, right? We see a greater success when we work with customers and starting with a small deployment, and small implementation, and slowly getting into more additional use cases. For example, starting with connecting few branches with inter-site connectivity like SD-WAN as a service, then adding remote access to third parties, which you don't want to go on a VPN, and then adding some of your developers and some of your IT and so forth. So slowly to adapt the new secure network as a service solution, and slowly start and turning off different components within the organization firewall. So we see it as a continuous implementation process.
All right, last question. So is my firewall dead? I mean, should I just start, thinking about these things as boat anchors, or what's going on here exactly?
Absolutely. I think that the cloud and mobility are completely changing the way we work. Think very logically, right? Your office is empty. It doesn't make sense anymore to consume security from a box. It doesn't make any more sense to provide site-centric security. The question is not what the security for the site in Tel Aviv or the site in New York or the site in San Francisco. The question is, what is the security for your mic, right? Regardless where you open your work computer that you get from your employer, if you open it in your home or open it in your office or while you're traveling, you should have the same security experience and the same working experience.
All right, so security is not a place that I go find. It's something that follows me around now, right?
Absolutely. It's an integrated part of everything that we do.
All right, Ahmed, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Mike. Enjoyed and all the best.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks, Mike. Great stuff there. And congratulations to all of the people at Perimeter 81. Next up, we're going to go to the Analyst Corner with Mitch. It's Mitchell Ashley, CEO, founder of Accelerated Strategies Group. Mitchell, take it away.
Welcome to Analyst Corner. Mitch Ashley, CEO of Accelerated Strategies Group. Some interesting things happening in software these days with open source software in particular. It was just a few days ago, I think it was last week actually, that Rancher Labs donated a lighter weight Kubernetes designated instead of K8s as K3s to CNCF. And I thought that was particularly interesting because the use cases for it aren't necessarily the same mainstream use cases for K8s. No, who knows? That could pan out to not be the case in the end of things. But a lot of what's driving the need for a lighter weight Kubernetes environment so developers can set up environments on their machines, maybe highly complex environments, but not take quite so much resources. You could also, use it as sandboxes for doing testing or for doing development. They're also talking about this might potentially be useful at the edge or for kind of edge computing. I can see it for devices connecting to the edge that might be able to run containers, but you have much less resources. So it sounds really interesting, and I'm curious to see where this goes now that it's been donated to the CNCF, which goes to the larger kind of population of open source software and how that's used in our business climate today. I mean, whether you're on the production side in IT organizations, building a lot of infrastructure, applications, all leveraging, I'm sure, a lot of open source. At least we did when I was doing that kind of thing myself. But also the business model as it evolves too. I mean, you have companies who are very aggressive in taking, not just open source, but you take the completely transparent approach of how you run your company and communicate within your company, and GitLab is a company that comes to mind that's obviously fits into that world. And there's great things that we can learn from that. But open source has been through such an evolution of its strategy. I remember when I was in security, doing security work in early 2000s, there were some great open source projects back then, but we didn't have models for companies building themselves around open source software. I mean, Red Hat was one of the few, may have been almost the only. But things have changed a lot since those days, and we have open core as a strategy now. We have folks who have not been open as open with their open source or their source code, and starting to open up now more broadly. So I think that's certainly a trend that we'll continue to see. I hope it is. It's a trend because so much innovation happens that way now. I mean, Google contributing Kubernetes to start with, right? Think the environment we would be without that. I mean, it may have been filled in another way, or that kind of opportunity, being addressed in some other way. Who knows? It might have been better. You don't know that, but no way to know that. But we certainly have, transformed software by a company donating its, a technology that it develops for the betterment of the industry. Now, things aren't done in altruistic fashion. There's always other motives and interests and outcomes folks are looking for in those contributions. So it's, look at it naively as just people giving away their software. But there's usually a reason behind it, and some of it may be benevolent. Anyway, point being, check out the new lighter weight distribution that Ranger Labs contributed to the CNCF. I'd be interested to see what you think the use case scenarios are for a lighter weight Kubernetes. I'm sure there are many, many more that I haven't thought of. And I'd love to have a discussion with you about that if you're ever interested in doing so. Reach out to me at Mitch Ashley at accelst.com. And my email address is mitchell@accelst.com. And I'd love to talk to you about that and other things. Have a great week.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Hi, I'm joined by a couple of special people, some folks that I really enjoy working with from ASG Technologies, different than ASG that I work with. So I'm joined today by Jeff Charrington and Anna Murray. Thank you both for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Mitch. I'm Jeff Charrington. I'm Vice President of Product Management for Systems with ASG Technologies. Many of you may know ASG. We've been in enterprise infrastructure management software for over 40 years, and certainly hold a prominent position as well in enterprise content management. We're very keen to have the conversation today around how traditional infrastructure, meaning the mainframe, aligns with new DevOps initiatives in the enterprise. Anna, if you would introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, my name is Anna Murray, and I'm a senior product manager with ASG Technologies, and I work with Jeff Charrington. And I have extensive experience with automation across platforms and data centers, as well as agile transformation for teams.
Excellent. Jeff was saying before we started that he used to work in radio. You can tell. Very comfortable behind a microphone, no doubt. No doubt. We were talking about everybody's on video these days, so that's awesome. Well, great. We've been doing some work together, and we do have a report coming out to kind of pre-announce that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But there's a lot of myth about DevOps and mainframes. I know even some analysts, I won't name any names, have said they're two different paths. You shouldn't try to do both. I think the jury has started to change their mind on that. Why do you think some of those myths have existed of, no, we can't do DevOps on mainframe environments? Do you want to start, Jeff?
I think I will. And then I'm sure Anna's got some thoughts that she'll want to contribute. It's certainly a reality within the industry that we're going through a generational shift around our leadership for IT, whether it's infrastructure or application development. There are those who are still working daily, like myself, who represent the traditions of IT from the very beginnings back in the 1960s. And then there are others who are certainly much younger and certainly have much different experiences, which may not include any exposure to the mainframe. And as a consequence, there might be some resistance, there might be a little bit of anxiety about the technology, and it can be formidable to approach if you don't have appropriate background. The things that we'd love to talk to, though, is that the mainframe as traditional technology still performs incredibly important roles within the enterprise. And at the end of the day, DevOps is much more about technique than technology, and it can apply as easily to mainframe and should as it does to any other part of the IT infrastructure. Anna, do you have some thoughts to build on that?
Sure. You know, as I think about the generation gap that you're talking about, you know, I kind of come on the other end, but I'm Gen X. And so we were the generation that said, oh, the mainframe's dying, right? So, you know, that obviously I've learned that's totally wrong. And the generation coming after is coming in to learn the mainframe and realize how powerful it is, right? And so I think a lot of the leaders that are coming in are coming from this generation that didn't even think about mainframe for a while, right? And so they did all their planning and their agile transformation and their DevOps transformations thinking about the cloud and all of their Windows and Linux and Unix servers, and didn't even think about the mainframe. And so I think that's the other side of the gap that happens as the younger leaders are coming up. You know, especially I would say blame my generation the most, right? Because there's this gap. And learn more and make sure you're talking to both ends of the spectrum and learn about crossing the gap.
And actually, the way I like to phrase it now is far less to use jargon like generational gap, but instead talk about generational bridge, because that's what I'm seeing.
That's so much better.
We're seeing that the younger IT professionals are identifying that there's great opportunity to work with mainframe in the coming years. And so we see millennials, or is it Gen Y, the generation after yours, Anna, who are stepping forward and saying, this is really interesting. The mainframe does all of the technologies, it supports all of the technologies that I learned in university. I can do Java, I can do TCP/IP connections. I've got great sources for strong cryptography. It supports Unix. I can put Linux onto a mainframe LPAR. This is a good space to be in. And so more and more, we're seeing that the people we engage with are a mix of people that are my age with the white beard or the gray beard, and a mix of young, fresh faces that are really eager and really excited to get involved and who come predisposed to new techniques such as DevOps.
You know, there's so many important things that both of you said. One is that in DevOps, there is no technology definition of what it applies to. And it's very easy to associate it with cloud native and maybe newer applications because that's where it's sort of grew up initially. But DevOps is really about how we create software, not what technology we use to create software. So, and it's about how teams collaborate. It's about how you share information. It's about how you get different functions from the business together in a collaborative team, kind of do things earlier in the process, do automation. All of that applies to the mainframe, of course, and there's tools to do much of what we've talked about. Maybe you can say a little bit about how people approach DevOps in the mainframe environment. You want to go, Anna?
Right. Well, you know, when you approach DevOps in the mainframe environment, it's not so much just about the mainframe environment, but the company. The whole organization has to be behind DevOps. And there has to be leadership saying, hey, this is something we need across silos, right? And then you have to look at the tools available to you. The DevOps is a lot about the tool chain itself. There's hundreds of tools in that tool chain. And so you have to start looking for solutions that are going to meet your needs and help you cross those silos.
You know, it's certainly true that everybody resists change. I think that's an innate part of human nature. But both Anna and I have seen that things of this nature can come forward, can be used with teams that are mainframe centric, perhaps have been doing things the way they've been doing them for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. And there's natural resistance. Gosh, you know, I've done things the way I've done them successfully for so long, why should I change? Certainly, I've seen Agile adopted by mainframe development teams, sometimes kicking and screaming, but once the resistance curve is overcome, it becomes very productive and becomes very natural. And I think we're at that stage now in terms of adoption of DevOps for the entire enterprise infrastructure, from Windows all the way to the mainframe and on to the cloud, and even on to mobile, even as there are initial reactions of going, you know, how can this apply? This is not something I learned when I went to my classes to learn more about the mainframe at Share in 1995 or 1985. But we have proof points. We have large international enterprises. We have small regional enterprises that are coming forward and saying, I must have mainframe. It plays a critical role for things that I need to do, particularly around payments processing, anything that needs highly available, real-time, online, absolute, reliable performance. And it is only part of my infrastructure. And I need to treat how I develop there the same way I treat developing anywhere else.
You're talking about also, so many apps are not just a mobile app, right? There's a whole back end to it. Oftentimes sharing data, even talking transactions between multiple systems. One of those or multiple maybe mainframe applications. You know, and if I step back for a minute and think about our current environment and how much things have accelerated in doing sort of these digital transformation, you know, digital experiences for customers, you know, organizations are looking to both strategically move quicker, but also be able to react opportunistically and sometimes, you know, based on conditions. And it seems like that some of the flexibility with DevOps makes it easier to coordinate some of those activities across multiple applications. So if you do have to do 3 different releases to make up one new capability, that comes together much easier.
It does. You know, the thing that I always look to as I engage with anything around business is, to use an old phrase, why is the juice worth the squeeze? And while we talk about DevOps a lot because of its elegance, because of its collaboration, because of the ways in which it makes development easier, the real juice of the squeeze is time to market. The whole reason to consider DevOps is how can we get something we need to get in terms of new technology enablement to market quickly, more quickly than we did before, but not sacrifice quality. And that's what we see time and time again is we have something we need to get to market. I want to present new capabilities to my customers through an app on the phone because that's where people live their digital lives. But at the back end, it's dependent upon the mainframe for things such as account balances, customer statuses, an unending list of capabilities that still remain on the platform as the best place for that type of activity to occur.
Yeah, I'm thinking about just the recent experiences with reactions to COVID and contextless delivery. Product inventories are often something that's still on the mainframe, has been for a long time. And now, you know, retail stores, as well as a lot of others, have to be able to maintain a really accurate enough inventory and also present that to the customers so they know what store can I go at to pick up whatever I'm looking at buying. I'm curious too, I know that ASG Technologies has some of your own products, your own technology around this idea of orchestration across platforms, because you work both mainframe and non-mainframe environments. Talk to us a little bit about how you approached coming up with that product and maybe a little bit about how it works, what it does.
Sure, I'll jump in for a little bit here. You know, you talk about orchestration, that's combining your tool chain, right? You've got all the little pieces of your DevOps tool chain, and you need to figure out how to connect all the dots and bring it together. And, you know, ASG's been doing automation and orchestration for a long time, but we've changed our focus into bringing in the development part of that tool chain, right? There's operations has been kind of a focus of automation for a long time. And now we have to pull in all of the development pieces that happen and the configuration management that happens and all of those. There's lots of little tools there, right? So we haven't tried to come at the market as trying to provide all the tools, but we're trying to provide some of them, right? And we definitely want to orchestrate as many as possible, right? And cover the entire environment for the customer. On the mainframe, the most popular thing we've been working with recently is JCL management. Every mainframe's running JCL, right? Nothing happens on the mainframe without it. And so making sure that there's a DevOps interface to your JCL management solution is really important. And so we've made an investment in making sure that ours has both an Eclipse plugin that makes it easier for the developers to interface with that JCL, as well as a RESTful web service API so that it can be integrated with building of the products and crossing across the silos to other products.
Mm-hmm. And certainly in the approach that we've taken, we look to be a good citizen of the DevOps enterprise community. In the work that Anna and her team have done, we ensure that we support the most popular integrated development environments for doing this sort of work. So the JCL quality assurance and management offerings that we have for the mainframe are also certified for the CompuWare Topaz integrated development environment and for the IBM, what's the name of it again, Anna? It's
IDZ.
IDZ, what was the rational development environment,
yes,
that now rebranded, as well as any other Eclipse compatible IDE that a customer may want to use.
You know, it's interesting just thinking about all the number of the terms that you both used in just those last two comments. You know, mainframe 10 years ago, you wouldn't have been talking about, I don't think, RESTful, IDE, all the tools that we kind of think of as sort of in cloud applications. It's much of it is the same tool set, a lot of the same ideas, just working with integrating some other different tools that are specific to the mainframe environment.
It is. And, you know, I certainly want to encourage those who are listening and watching, and particularly those who may be ASG customers now or are considering becoming ASG customers, to join us at our Worldwide Customer Conference, a virtual conference this year, Evolve, that will be occurring on October 6th and 7th. Because we will be making some significant announcements about extending support in this area, including opportunities for creating interfaces to mainframe applications that can extend all the way to mobile, if that's of use to a customer. We've got a lot of excitement coming into this. We have a lot of partners and customers who are going to be presenting, and there's a great deal of energy that we'll be putting forth around our DevOps support and DevOps enablement.
And can folks sign up? How do they register to attend the virtual conference? Is that on your website?
It's on our website. If you come to www.asg.com, I'm sure you'll find something right on the homepage that says Evolve 2020, and it'll give you the opportunities to get, well, involved.
Evolve and involved.
Exactly.
You know, the fact that you get to work with so many organizations that are adopting DevOps, I'm kind of curious about two things. How does the mainframe teams approach wanting to learn about DevOps and coming up to speed and trying it? And then how do the existing practitioners that may be outside of the mainframe group that are also using DevOps, how do they see what's happening in the organization, and do they want to participate? Do they support it, or they're kind of not sure? What do you see happening there?
So yeah, there's a mixed feeling. There's definitely differences between, if it's led from the top down and people are being told they have to change, right? Depends on how you've adjusted the expectations in your team, right? Helping them learn what's coming and why, instead of just telling people what to do makes a huge difference, right? We're all much more interested in solving problems and learning new things together. So it's really important conversation is held properly, right? So we have some that are really excited that they want to learn and they want to jump in from the mainframe side and grow. And then there's others that are really just struggling and pulling their mainframe teams along, right? So one customer I think of, standardized on CompuWare Topaz Workbench, but the developers are less interested in switching over. They have some of the older generation who's very comfortable with the green screen, and they think, why bother switching to Topaz? They just don't even get it. And so, the truth is we really need to have solutions that meet the needs of all of the people that are part of the DevOps environment, right? So it isn't, a very experienced mainframe programmer doesn't have to use Eclipse, right? They can be quite happy on the green screen, and we should let them stay there, right? And we do. Our JCL management solutions have a very robust green screen interface. And then we bridge the gap, as Jeff was talking about earlier, with having those APIs, right? And so, yes, so the DevOps toolchain is still brought together with something like our ASG Enterprise Orchestrator, pulling in the code and grabbing with the API, the JCL, and making sure that the standards are applied, and then bringing them across for compiles and distribution into another environment, right? So not that you compile JCL, but there's other parts that are related. So, like you asked, it's kind of a mixed bag, and we see that too, right? And as the conversation becomes more common, right? I think we'll have more people who are more comfortable having that conversation and learning together.
Excellent. Well, Jeff is getting bitten by the Zoom bug, so we had to call in from his dropping. So glad you're still with us, Jeff. We were just talking about the adoption process, and Anna, you were talking about how mainframe teams kind of approach this. How about the other side of it? DevOps teams that maybe aren't in the mainframe group, maybe they've been practicing this for a while, maybe a few months, a few years. How do they see this happening? And is there collaboration? Do they pitch in? Do they tend to work together, or not? How does it go?
Well, some of the things I've seen actually goes to either end of the spectrum. For the teams working with the more modern technologies and have adopted DevOps very frequently, we find evangelists, those who have gotten to the point where they believe in the techniques and the approaches so passionately that they're out there actually promoting them everywhere they can. It's much like what we saw with the adoption of Agile in the last decade. We're seeing that same sort of passion surround this approach to development in this decade. It's one of those things we have to keep in mind. DevOps was not even a term within the industry until 2009. I mean, it's barely a decade old, and it's in this last 5 years that we have seen the acceleration for adoption. Now, having said that, there certainly are always going to be pockets within any enterprise where, again, there's resistance. There are those who are not looking for change, and those that perhaps, while they have embraced the DevOps approaches for their distributed systems or cloud development, look at the ideas of what they have to change or adapt to on the mainframe side and really don't want to go there. The idea that might be a long compile that has to be done on the mainframe before the next step in the DevOps process can occur will cause a little bit of agita. And that's why it's so important we need to take a look at the strategies that are necessary for DevOps success. I think that's something that you speak to very eloquently, Mitch. And out of those steps, the one that I think is so critically important is culture shift. Just like with Agile adoption, DevOps adoption needs support from the top, and it needs to be constantly vocal support to help people pull through these resistance curves. Resistance curves are natural, and the quicker an enterprise gets through them, the quicker they get to a point that they're delivering new capabilities to market much more quickly.
Well, thanks for
Right.
your kind words about the culture too, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Anna. Culture is a lot of things, but I think we're all human at the end of the day, and none of us want to look dumb, right? We don't want to tackle something we don't know if we can learn, or maybe not kind of look so good in front of our peers if we're the ones behind the curve. And I think something that can help combat that is one of the principles of DevOps is sharing. Is really it's collaborating, but it's also sharing scripts, process, tools, content, methods, all of those kind of things, which if you truly adopt DevOps, as you said, Jeff, you can be an advocate and then also help people with that transition. And very quickly, they kind of get over that curve of, okay, all right, I'm familiar with this, as you mentioned, on. I can still use my green screen or many of the tools that I'm already using. I'm just adding to kind of what I've been doing. So your thoughts, Anna?
Right. Well, I've recently been having other conversations with partners about this culture shift, and it's become really clear and with other companies that are supporting DevOps and those initiatives that you really have to have not just buy-in from your senior management, you've got to have active support. They have to sponsor the change, because we've also seen companies who don't go through the change, they fail. If it's from the bottom up only and the senior leadership says, oh, okay, yeah, sure, that's a great idea, but they're not actually, investing in it themselves. The team, when they hit road bumps, because they will, it's not, switching to DevOps doesn't happen overnight. I think we all know that. And over time, you're going to hit roadblocks and you're going to get discouraged. And who is it that's going to lift you up? Now, hopefully there's evangelists that'll help keep pulling you through and encouraging you. But at the end of the day, if your senior management isn't coming back in to say, hey guys, we believe in this process, it's worth fixing, we're going to invest in whatever it takes to solve this problem, then they're encouraged to keep moving forward, right? But there is the difference happening out there where the leadership isn't always invested in it. And so that's what we're really encouraging when it comes to that culture shift that has to happen. Make sure you get the not just buy-in, but investment from your senior leadership.
Hugely important. And it goes back to the why are we doing this question that you talked about also, Jeff. You talked about really responding quickly and getting software out to market more quickly. And today's situation with COVID and uncertain as well as very quickly changing conditions, something could very easily come down from product management or whoever to the development teams and say, okay, we need to add this capability or change how we're doing something. And the team's ability to react quickly, I mean, they already do today, but even more quickly under these circumstances, I think demonstrates the value not only of DevOps, but also of those teams.
Absolutely. I mean, it's always a virtue to be able to get to market quickly. And in the current period of the pandemic, it's a virtue that actually can impact lives on a broad scale. As the different national governments are taking the steps that they need to take to provide stimulus and secure the safety of their populations during all of this disruption, one of the things we've seen is that there have to be changes to critical traditional mainframe systems for all of this to happen. Certainly the unemployment compensation that was distributed here in the US touched legacy traditional systems at the state level that perhaps have not been actively developed for some period of years. And certainly those government enterprises or commercial enterprises that were pre-prepared to apply their DevOps techniques to making those changes to their traditional offerings, traditional applications, were better prepared to deal with this and to deal with the ongoing change as our governments try to figure out how to stabilize economies and get us through this challenging time.
You're absolutely right. And that's one example of many. I mean, there's the insurance claims processing to get your request fulfilled quickly, new medicines, all of that kind of thing. There's so many areas where mainframe technology is involved today. Well, I wish we could keep going. Maybe I have to come to the conference and to continue
would love
the
that.
conversation. But
You would always be welcome.
well, I appreciate that very much. And so just a reminder for our audience of the Evolve conference is on October 6th and 7th. Go to the ASG.com website to find out how to register. Absolutely recommend doing that. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a research report coming out. The working title of that report, I think, was 5 critical strategies for DevOps and mainframe. So we'll see, maybe that title will stick or something close to that. I'm excited to get that out because that's been a great effort working with you. Well, Anna Murray, thank you very much. Jeff Charrington, also, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. And
Thank
folks,
you, Mitch.
stay safe.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Hiring great DevOps and cyber talent is a huge challenge for technical teams. Cloud transformation is driving demand higher. You've tried doing it yourself. Job boards, LinkedIn, didn't work. Recruiters are an option, but who do you trust and not waste your time and money? Recruit Ops is the new way to source engineering talent. From Media Ops, the people behind DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Container Journal, and more. We sit right in the middle of the hottest positions in Dev, Sec, and Ops, and the brightest minds in the field. If you're looking for a great position or the talent to fill it, we can help you. Trust us, risk-free.
Thanks, Mitchell. Great stuff as usual. Well, folks, I think that's going to make a wrap for today, Thursday, August 27th. Just a reminder, we will not be on with fresh content tomorrow. We'll be replaying one of our best of shows. And it'll have great content anyway, and maybe you haven't caught it all. So do check out that. We will be back Monday. And the last day of the month for some interesting new fresh content here on TechStrong.tv. Hey, if you've missed any, they are available on DevOps.com and, on the DevOps.com mobile app, as well as the DevOps.com app on Apple TV, Roku, as well as Amazon Fire TV. Also, all the individual interviews from TechStrong TV are available on digitalanarchist.com. You could keyword search or search by guest or company and bring them up there, and it's pretty good to watch them from there. And those are available also on the mobile and OTT apps. So until Monday then, this is Alan Schimmel signing out on TechStrong TV. Be safe, be well, be strong, TechStrong. Bye-bye.